The views and opinions expressed in the following program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of KSMQ Public Service Media Incorporated or its assigns.
Coming up on Farm Connections, we visit the intersection of agriculture and education. First, Dan brings us to a classroom where special visitors teach students valuable lessons in agriculture. Then, he introduces us to young people working with the World Food Prize. And we meet our next FFA Student Leader of the Week. It's all next on Farm Connections. Farm Connections on KSMQ, sponsored in part by the Cedars of Austin, a senior living community. We even have a retired farmers club. Independent, assisted, and memory care apartments. Learn more at cedarsofaustin.com. Will Mahler, the ag attorney, has been representing dairy farms in Minnesota, Iowa, and Wisconsin for 37 years. Will Mahler, the ag attorney's office is in Rochester, and Will is a proud partner of Farm Connections. Thanks, Will Mahler.
On today's Farm Connections, we'll take a look at agriculture with fresh eyes, the eyes of school children who took part in the popular Ag in the Classroom program. Young people are fascinated with farming, but because fewer people live on farms, most are unaware of what it means to be a farmer, and many don't even know where their food comes from. I had the opportunity to visit with the organizers of a local Ag in the Classroom program to understand how they're teaching kids vital lessons about agriculture.
Agriculture is in everything that everybody does every day. The foods you eat, the products that you use, it's in the fuel that you drive your car in. So, agriculture is a huge part in our daily life, whether you're on the farm or off the farm. Telling our story, the farmer's story, has always been a part of life, and educating youth, educating the public, educating friends, family, everybody is part of our story and what farmers need to do.
It is my job to make sure that these youth understand that there is more behind the box of cornflakes than what they see at the grocery store. And I want them to know that I'm working very hard to make sure that all the products that I produce on my farm are produced safe, are produced healthy, and they're good products for them. And I do my best to produce them at an economical price for them to be able to purchase so that they can feed their families. There were 177 third graders from all of the Waseca schools here. There are 3 elementary schools within the city of Waseca. We've worked hard to be able to include all of the schools because we think the message is important for all of them to understand.
My husband Scott and I have been doing Ag in the Classroom school visits for 21 years now. It started out when our oldest daughter, Michelle, was in Mrs. Leet's 3rd grade class, and we decided we wanted to bring in our baby piglets to the classroom and show the kids our baby piglets and tell them about our farm and how we raise the pigs on our farm and how important it is for farmers in their life to raise the food that they buy in the grocery store. We find that children are getting more disconnected from farming. We would go into the classroom back 21 years ago and ask how many children grew up on a farm or were living on a farm, and you'd have 2 or 3 kids in each classroom raise their hand. And now if you ask that question, you maybe get 1 to raise their hand. So the kids aren't growing up on a farm. They don't know what happens on a farm, and we need to educate them how we raise the food that they get in the grocery store. We put information in their bags to take home on each of the commodities we talked about, so they can bring the information home to their families and show their parents what they learned at school today, and talk to their brothers and sisters about that they had some farmers come in and talk about what we do on the farm. I've had the same farmers come for the last 20 years, and I really appreciate them coming out every year, and we've done it so many years now, we just kind of come and know what to do and where to go and do our thing, and we work well together. We know we have a half an hour to do the presentations, and then the kids rotate, and so it's been a great group of farmers to work with, and I'm glad that they're always willing to help out.
Cows and sheep, when they can swallow their food, they can also do the opposite of swallowing and bring it back up.
And then chew it again.
And then chew it again.
Kids' questions and the interest that they sit there and take. When I would go through some of this stuff and they give you that look of, oh really, that's cool, kind of, or that's neat, or I answered a question, they're like, oh, I didn't know that. I mean, that's what, the look on their face when they find something out. I think it's because it's kind of new to them. You know, again, it's not a familiar subject. We do bring the little lambs with, which does help. Oh, that's, you know, neat, and so they really are interested in what we have to say. And then we're also not the regular teacher they get every day. So they can say, hey, there's somebody else. Here's a real farmer I got to talk to. Sometimes we'll give them a little curriculum ahead of time. Each student gets a bag with some, in our case from the sheep, there's materials, a magazine that kind of talks about the sheep industry.
And it's going to put spin in these little fibers.
So the kids go home with a whole bunch of information. And hopefully when they get home, they say, hey Mom, look what we did today. Hopefully it's shared with the adults at home. And that's, you know, again, making that connection back to a consumer. Well, I love the kids, and it's fun to see their reaction when they pet the lambs or they find out that, whoa, I can touch them, I can feel them.
Come on in around this way.
One of them is about a week old, the other one was probably 2.5 weeks old. They're usually lambs that I'll pick out that I'm bottle feeding or for some other reason that are used to humans. I enjoy sharing with others.
We farm about 1,400 acres. You know how big 1 acre is?
They ask some really good questions, so they're paying attention. They're always really interested in the combine and how many acres we can do and how long does it take us, and those are really good questions. Somebody wanted to know how many people, if you stacked how many people on top of each other, how long would it take before they reach the top of the combine? I talk about the different products that come from the corn and the soybeans. And if, such as tofu, for example, if you wanted to extend your hamburger or exclude your hamburger altogether, tofu is a good protein to replace your meat product. I tried to let them know that all the things that we can plan for, getting the crops in the ground, we can only plan so far. The weather still plays a huge role. For them to put it in some kind of perspective on their level, I think it helps. You know, it'd be so fun if we could bring a combine in and let them climb around the combine, but I think that's all we would get done then, is climbing around the machinery. So my toys have to do.
So they ask the questions almost as much as the kids. The teachers, especially the new ones and the student teachers, for them it's kind of like the kids that come. It's another connection that a lot of the student teachers have never seen this kind of thing either. We have lots of parents, and it's a good chance for me to educate them as to what we do, and even to educate them about the food supply they get. They'll have questions on, what do you feed them? Is it all safe for me to eat? Are you using antibiotics? Are you not? All those questions they get in the media, and here they can talk directly to a farmer and find out what it is. And I think that's a good way to, I'm hoping they really believe it better than they would hearing it from the media source. And I know I do find people later or other years, even some of the kids will come back after our presentations today that I see and say, hey, I remember you when you came and showed us the little lambs. You're the sheep farmer.
I think we just need to keep having conversations. Anytime you can Keep having a conversation with somebody. Keep having the conversation about your farm. People are really interested.
Well, Kim Ball, thanks for visiting with us at Farm Connections and KSMQ.
Thank you.
This wonderful day when you showed some of our youth in Waseca how agriculture works. Tell us why you do that.
I think one of the things that's most important started back when I was in high school in FFA, and our FFA chapter would go into the elementary school where I was at and did what we called the Food for America program. And we were able to provide students some basic information about farming and provide it in parameters that they found easy to understand. I've had opportunities when I was at college to do Ag in the Classroom presentations at St. Paul schools, and when I lived out in Washington, D.C., I also worked out for the National FFA, and we also did Ag in the Classroom presentations. I think the most important thing in my presentations that I found out, particularly when I was in Washington, D.C. in the late 80s, was to understand that there were people out there who really thought milk came from the grocery store and not from a cow. And so it's always been an important mission of mine to be able to convey at least the basics to people so that they understand where their food really does come from.
What's the most interesting question that a youth has asked you?
I think one of the most important things that I hear from them is, are you really a farmer? I think they just find it interesting that they can actually meet a farmer. I think that's one of the most intriguing questions is like, wow, I didn't know you could be a farmer. And I do enjoy that question because then it gives you the ability to tell them that yes, I am, and you can be one too if you want to.
Are they also surprised to find out a female is a farmer?
I don't see that in my perception, particularly now. More so when I was back in Washington, D.C., they thought it was unusual for a girl to even grow up on a farm. So that was probably more of an awareness back then that it was unusual for ladies to be doing that. I don't see that as much of an issue today in the school system that we work in.
Great. And in Washington, any differences between the East Coast and the Midwest with students and their questions and their understanding of agriculture?
Most definitely. They were far, far removed from it, so you had to deal with the very basics. You had to show them pictures so they could understand what a cow looked like because they were used to seeing cartoony animals. You would actually bring in actual samples of an ear of corn so they could understand what it looks like. So pictures really were worth 1,000 words when I was doing presentations out in Washington, D.C., because you would have to go quite a ways to be able to find the real thing depending on where in Washington you lived.
Great. Why is it important for our young people to understand where food comes from?
I think there's been a disconnect for a while, and some of their parents may not have had some of the practical applications like I had growing up. My family had a garden, so even a lot of students don't live in homes where gardens are there, so the very basic concepts of growing things and being able to see the fruits of your labor by harvesting vegetables is something they don't understand.
Do you tell the youth that you also eat the same food you produce?
There are individuals that have asked that question, and I say most definitely. I raised it and I know what has gone on, and I'm confident of what I produce to feed my family.
What is your favorite food?
My favorite food is chocolate chip cookies. So at this point, I'm not a cocoa producer, so I have to rely on farmers from other countries for a portion of my food. But as an individual who lives in the United States, I benefit from the fact that I have a large number of choices, and I'm privileged to be able to have a large number of choices. There are many places in the world where that is not the case.
If a cocoa producer gets money from selling product to you and into the cookies, what might they buy from you?
Depending on where the cocoa producer is from, I'm sure they probably buy grains from the United States. We do raise corn and soybeans at our farm, so I'm sure there's a possibility that they would be purchasing some of the cereal grains for use in their own personal homes.
Great deal of coordination today. How many students saw this presentation about agriculture?
There were 177 third graders from all of the Waseca schools here. There are 3 elementary schools within the city of Waseca. We've worked hard to be able to include all of the schools because we think the message is important for all of them to understand.
And you did a great job. They were enthusiastic, well-behaved, lots of great questions.
Thank you very much.
Well, thanks for doing this.
You're welcome.
One of the most gratifying aspects of my role in Farm Connections is getting to meet young people who are dedicated to agriculture. Their enthusiasm is contagious and it causes me to feel hopeful about our future. I recently had the opportunity to meet up with a group of young people who are involved in the Minnesota Youth Institute, which develops youth leaders in agriculture. Their studies have taken them around the world and they've learned valuable lessons about farming and agriculture. Let's listen in. Farm Connections traveled to the University of Minnesota St. Paul campus to meet with Kay Ellingson. Kay is the coordinator of the Minnesota Youth Institute. Kay, can you tell us what that program is all about?
Well, the Minnesota Youth Institute was founded in 2008 by someone here on campus named Ron Phillips. He was approached by Dr. Norman Borlaug, who asked that Minnesota participate in a Global Youth Institute, which takes place every fall in Iowa as part of the World Food Prize.
Excellent. And with you are some very nice young people that have been involved in the Minnesota Youth Institute. Could you tell us your name and where you went to school?
My name is Mira Suri and I went to Roseville Area High School.
I'm Sarah Marketon and I go to Howard Lake Waverly Winstead High School.
Addie Thompson from Hamburg, Iowa.
Tessa Reese from Reading, Minnesota.
Awesome. And I think we have some people that have been on their travel experience already, Mira and Addie, correct? Mira, where did you go on your international experience?
For my experience, I was in Beijing, China at Peking University.
What did you learn there?
I learned a lot. I was working in a plant biology, plant genetics lab, and I had the opportunity to work with a lot of different farmers and understand really how technologies from the lab are incorporated into different farms around the area. So it was a really incredible experience for me to learn about the connection between lab work and the real lab to farm connection.
Excellent. Did you find there were people that were without food in that area?
Absolutely. Beijing itself is a really metropolitan area, and in that I think you find a lot of people who are on either end of the spectrum, both really wealthy and really not so wealthy. And in the surrounding farms, right away you can see that the class divide and the economic divides split as soon as you get out of the fifth ring circle road that separates the city from the villages next door.
Any thoughts on what can be done about that hunger problem?
Absolutely. I think what really needs to happen is that technology needs to become more accessible to the farmers who are living outside the limits of having the financial ability to just pick up and buy new technologies. And I think having lower priced technologies are really going to be what bring us into the next age of farmers accepting technologies from the U.S.
Thank you. Addie, where'd you go?
I went to the International Rice Research Institute in the Philippines back in 2003, actually. So I went through the Iowa program.
So you've had the value of going in 2003 and then thinking about it for a long period afterwards and observing and reflecting. Give us some of those thoughts.
It's really a life-changing experience, hands down. For me, it shaped my future career and my life goals. I'm currently a student in applied plant sciences here at the U of M, a graduate student, and that's what I want to do with my life, is to work on improving plants for nutrition or for better agricultural purposes and learning about plant science. And that was not actually my goal going into the institute. So I was interested in genetics, but I hadn't swayed over to the plant side yet, and that really inspired me to do that.
Now that you have focus on a goal, how are you going to use that goal to help the hunger situation in the world?
It's difficult to say exactly at this point, but I think the biggest thing that it's done for me is, first of all, opened up a lot of opportunities, and also honestly made me a little bit braver when it comes to new opportunities. So at first the thought of going abroad was kind of scary to me. I actually just kind of wanted to go to the Institute at Iowa, and then I just sort of applied for the internship on a whim, not thinking I would get it. And I think my parents were actually nervous about sending me. But it was a great experience and extremely eye-opening, and just, seeing a new culture for the first time. It's a completely new thing. And I think down the road, if something were to come up where I would have the opportunity to go abroad or to work as a director at an international institute or, any of those sorts of things, I'd be way more likely to take that step and be able to do that.
Thanks for sharing. Tessa, tell us about your experiences thus far.
I was a part of the Minnesota Youth Institute. Addie actually told me about the programs, and then my agriculture education teacher in Red Wing, Mr. Sheehan, was totally excited about the opportunity and told me that he could go with me. And then I went to Iowa and learned a lot there, and signed up for the internship on a whim, just like Addie, and actually got it, and I'm going to Ankara, Turkey this summer.
When do you leave?
8 days.
Are you excited?
I'm really excited.
So we've got experience, we've got someone that's apprehensive and ready to go. Yeah. And Sarah, you recently became an institute person?
Yeah, last summer I went to the International Livestock Research Institute in Ethiopia.
What'd you see there?
I worked on a couple different projects. One was on improving diseases with the village poultry, and another was improving sheep genetics. So I got to see a lot of different villages. I saw a lot of poverty, which was really eye-opening for me. It was definitely the farthest I've ever traveled away from home. It was basically the first time I'd ever flown on an airplane. So it was a lot of fun though, and I learned a lot. Learned that cultural barriers are something that we're going to have to learn to work with, because I spent a day down in the Rift Valley where we were working with a nomadic tribe, and they were given irrigated land by the government but didn't want it because that would force them to stay in one spot. And that lifestyle was so deeply ingrained in who they were that it was really important for them to keep moving around. So, you know, I've learned that there's kind of a fine line between working with those cultural differences and also, you know, trying to improve their production methods.
That was in the Rift Valley. Did you see other areas that were more lush and green?
Yes, I was, I guess, mainly in Addis Ababa, which is the capital, and most of Ethiopia is at a very high elevation, so it looks a lot like Minnesota with the green grass and green trees. Only when I spent that day in the Rift Valley did it look like I pictured Africa, hot and dry and with the scrubby trees. So it was, again, that was really interesting for me to see.
Thank you. And you're still in high school?
Yeah, I'm graduating this year, and in the fall I'll come to the University of Minnesota to major in agricultural education.
What a great opportunity.
Definitely.
And Kate, can you tell us how it came to the University of Minnesota and the tie-in with Norman Borlaug?
Well, Norman Borlaug was a graduate of the University of Minnesota, so we're very proud of that fact. And he had very close ties to the U of M. He has a lot of good friends here, so he approached us and asked that we start participating in the Global Youth Institute. The way that it came about, as far as my participation, I sort of slid into the position of the state coordinator. We formed a committee. We started deciding how we were going to find students to participate. So we needed to recruit, and then we needed to set standards and how we were going to develop our own youth institute. We have a lot of really great people on the committee who are very passionate about getting students involved. We highly encourage any high school student who's interested at all in world hunger or agriculture to come and participate.
Well, you spoke of Norman Borlaug. Not only did he win the Nobel Peace Prize,
right,
he was credited with saving billions of lives by the Green Revolution, plant breeding, and bringing yields up and using technology. And he must have said, I want you to learn about it too, because isn't it funded from outside of the university?
The Global Youth Institute is all funded by the World Food Prize Organization. The Minnesota Youth Institute is funded by the College of Food, Agricultural, and Natural Resource Sciences. So the thing I was going to say about Dr. Borlaug is he loved youth, and he had a passion for teaching and educating younger people on all of the hunger issues and the problems that we have with pests and disease and plants, and he wanted youth to know how they could help and what they could do. He was a pay-it-forward kind of person.
What a wonderful program, and what a way to pay tribute to him and the university. And thank you for joining us today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
WK,
Happy to talk to you.
Sarah, thank you. Addie, thanks. Tessa, thanks, and good luck on your journey, and hopefully you'll help other people.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now it's time to meet our Farm Connections FFA Student Leader of the Week.
Hi, I'm Levi Anderson of the Hayfield FFA chapter. I'm the vice president. I show livestock for FFA. I enjoy, I really enjoy livestock. I enjoy having the companionship of cattle and pigs and everything, because I show beef, cattle, pigs, and this year I'm showing sheep too. I do the livestock judging CD where we evaluate beef cattle, hogs, and sheep, and they're 3 areas that I'm kind of involved with, so it's fun. Oh, I'm here volunteering at Breakfast on the Farm today at Gene Anderson's in Waltham, Minnesota. I'm actually from this area. I've helped him many different times on the farm. It's a good experience. There's so many different people that I've met that I'll probably have relationships with for the rest of my life. There's probably some girl out there I met that might be my wife someday. You never know. Even if you're not necessarily involved in agriculture, there's a lot more to agriculture than just cows, plows, and sows. If there's a kid watching this program and you're not in FFA and you're thinking about it, I definitely think you should join FFA because it's an experience of a lifetime.
Thank you for joining me on Farm Connections. On every episode, I learn something and I hope you do too. Please join me next week for more Farm Connections.
Farm Connections on KSMQ, sponsored in part by the Cedars of Austin, a senior living community. We even have a retired farmers club. Independent, assisted, and memory care apartments. Learn more at cedarsofaustin.com. Will Mahler, the ag attorney, has been representing dairy farms in Minnesota, Iowa, and Wisconsin for 37 years. Will Mahler, the ag attorney's office is in Rochester, and Will is a proud partner of Farm Connections. Thanks, Will Mahler.